Dolphins Today is presented by Manscape. Go to manscape.com. Use promo code Dolphins for 20% off plus free shipping. And later on, I'll tell you all about the Lawn Mower Ultra 5.0. But we got a busy show to get to and a big game on Friday that I'm feeling pretty confident about. But how are you feeling? Do you see a Dolphins win coming? If so, let me know. Type me in the comments. Busy show to get to on Dolphins Today. Let's do it. Hey, not only is it a quick week for the Miami Dolphins and a quick turnaround with the game on Friday, but it's also a busy news day in the National Football League. Some unexpected news that we'll get to. We'll also talk about some Dolphins injury news, lots to get to, some not so positive injury news, some unexpected injury news, but you know when you're tuned into Dolphins Today that you will get the latest and greatest from Miami, so we'll touch on that. And lastly, kind of I don't want to say bombshell, so don't panic, but in the news, Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, could reportedly be selling a minority stake of ownership for the team. We'll get to all of that as well. So buckle up, dial it in. It is a busy show, and we start with news around the National Football League from the Rap Sheet. Ian Rappaport. The Colts have released Darius Leonard. You probably know him better as Shaq Leonard, and in Ian Rappaport's words, unreal. So he will head to waivers. And kind of interesting here, check out the statement and kind of an emotional statement for Leonard where he thanks the Colts for their time in Indianapolis. And you could tell he meant a lot to that team and a lot to the city, all kinds of tributes from his teammates on social media. And here's what Colts owner Jim Irsay had to say on the matter as well, wishing him all the best and talking about how impactful Shaq Leonard was for the Indianapolis Colts, and a guy that spent the bulk of his career in Indianapolis and really was a mainstay because of the production on the field and everything he did off the field as well. So you saw it from the tweet from Rappaport. Really surprising news, and this is a perennial all-pro linebacker that midway through the season is just unexpectedly waived. And now, he did have a diminished role with the Colts so far this season in 2023, but three-time Pro Bowler, three-time All-Pro, and depending on who you'd ask, I think most would say he was one of the NFL's best player from 2018 to 21. You see the numbers there, 158 tackles. But over the course of his career, just really, really steady production from a guy that was a staple in the Colts linebacking unit in the middle of that defense for years and years. The numbers on the screen for you there, 70 games. A number of stats jump out to you, but 17 forced fumbles in 70 games, pretty impressive, 614 tackles overall. So that begs the question as we get into this point of the season. We've been talking about this Dolphins defense, how much better they're getting. But how would you like to add a guy like Shaq Leonard? Let me know in the comments. If you want the Dolphins to make a move, type Y for yes or N for no. It's interesting because it is at a position group where not a lot of depth, and depending on Vic Fangio's scheme and how you want to splice it all up, David Long Jr. and Jerome Baker are the two linebackers that have done the majority of the workload on defense. Duke Riley hasn't really played much, and Bradley Chubb and Andrew Van Ginkel more of that outside linebacker role, Jalen Phillips as well. So when you think about him fitting on this Miami Dolphins team, it makes sense. However, there's always the financial component to get to when you start talking about high-profile signings and claiming a guy like Shaq Leonard off of waivers. So before he even gets into free agency, off of waivers, and what kind of impact that would have on the cap. Field Yates breaks it down here. He's under contract through 2026 and would be owed the following money. Now, this is pretty hefty, and Stephen Ross, who we'll talk about a little bit later, will have to dip deep into his pockets. $16.1 million in 2024, on the hook for $19 million in 2025, and in 2026, $19.6 million. Oh, by the way, $6.1 million for the remainder of this year. So sure, you and I both say, yeah, let's do it. Dip deep into those pockets and let's bring in Shaq Leonard. But remember the Dolphins cap situation that we have talked about before. Only 3 teams are in a worse scenario cap-wise then the Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay, New England, and Buffalo. Now, the Dolphins front office and Chris Greer and the rest of the Dolphins front office have made some steps to try to, mitigate some of that cap damage. And by doing so, they restructured Jason Sanders and Cedric Wilson's deal earlier. And that being said, there's still some notable free agents the Dolphins need to sign in 2024. Some big name, Christian Wilkins, Jerome Baker, and so on and so forth. Connor Williams, an offensive lineman that's been a mainstay at the center position. So, again, as I've said before, I'm glad that I don't have to lose sleep at night trying to figure out how exactly that's going to work. And you see a guy like Shaq Leonard become available, and you think, let's do it, pull the trigger. But unfortunately, this one is a great idea. However, executing it doesn't make as much sense. And so, unfortunately, I hate to be the guy with the bad news. I really do. But unfortunately, probably likely won't happen. That said, we've got more to get into on this edition of Dolphins Today. A detailed injury report coming up next. But first, I got to tell you about Manscape, proud sponsor of today's show. And even more importantly, the Lawn Mower Ultra 5.0. Listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Urgent message for you. Because as I mentioned, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped. It's the brand that took your balls to space, and they're now launching them into the Ultra Sphere. That's right, we're introducing the Lawn Mower 5.0 Ultra, featuring a new cutting-edge design and next-generation dual skin-safe blade heads for different shades. It's pretty much a spaceship to take your boys downstairs to the next level. So join the 9 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with the brand new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping when you use that code Dolphins. Now, there's lots of different features on the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. I like the little LED lights. That way, you can shed some light on the important sensitive areas. But find out for yourself, manscaped.com. Use that promo code Dolphins for 20% off. And as we always do, we'll make it really easy on you and put that link in the chat as well. But it's manscaped.com. Use that code Dolphins, 20% off plus free shipping. Now, for the Dolphins injury news, and it's, where our brains, we get into that routine where we think, okay, here we are in this point, game's on Sunday, but no, game's on Friday this week, so the injury report, a little bit more pressing, and it is detailed. So listen up. We'll start with this tweet from Marcel Louis Jacques, one of the Dolphins insiders, and it's pretty, I would say, important news to make note of, and surprising news for that matter. But the Dolphins have placed running back Salvon Ahmed on injured reserve and signed Robbie Chosen to the active roster. Whoa, out of nowhere, right? And Salvon Ahmed played a pretty important role in that game against the Raiders, especially when you consider the fact that Devon Achane went out with an injury. Ahmed had the receiving touchdown, and so for him to be placed on IR out of nowhere, really, really unexpected there. It's a foot injury that will cost him the rest of the season. But I'm going to focus on the positive part of this, and that is a second chance and another opportunity for Robbie Chosen, who went on to was waived, then signed to the practice squad, and then to the active roster for that game against the Raiders, and he made a catch. So just like a roller coaster ride for Robbie Chosen, but got to show him some love, give him some credit for making his way back to the Dolphins active roster. So credit to Robbie Chosen there. More injury news. Rob Jones, Durham Smythe, who also missed that game against the Raiders, were estimated as a DNP, so did not practice. And the reason we use the term estimated here is because the Dolphins held a walkthrough here today instead of a full practice. Devon Achane would have been listed as a limited participant in the walkthrough. So Achane's status for Friday still up in the air, with Ahmed going on IR. Probably think that leads to him, wanting, or at least being important for him to play on Friday against the Jets, or of course it will be Jeff Wilson Jr. Offensive line still banged up as well. So, a lot going on. Early game this week on Friday. I got to ask you, what is your concern level with the latest injury report? A lengthy injury report at that. Scale it for me, 1 through 10. And this is another news nugget that I wanted to touch on. I don't want to sound the alarms or raise any kind of concern for anybody, but there were reports that surfaced today. Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, could potentially be selling a minority stake in his ownership with the team. Andy Slater breaks it down for us here. The Slater scoop: Dolphins owner Stephen Ross is in talks to sell a minority stake in the team and Hard Rock Stadium in F1 Miami to hedge fund manager Ken Griffin. Multiple sources on this one. The NFL is aware of it, and for what it's worth, Griffin, who could potentially become a minority owner, is worth $35 billion. Yeah, when you say billion, you got to say billion with a B. $35 billion. Wow. A little bit more on Griffin from Joe Shad, who tells us he's a hedge fund manager who has had some talks about purchasing a minority share in Dolphins. Born in Daytona Beach, grew up in Boca Raton, and attended Boca Raton Community High School. So, Florida guy, Miami guy, and this isn't the first time talks with Stephen Ross have, circulated about selling the team. He was in talks earlier when the scandal was going on with the tampering case with Tom Brady. So Stephen Ross, again, he was kind of given a little bit of a let's relax by the NFL, and this is to sell a stake to hedge fund manager Ken Griffin. And there's rumblings that maybe the conversation is in the works for, Griffin to then become the majority owner later on. But at this point, all speculation, but something to be aware of. And I'll tell you this, it's one of those things that you just kind of keep your eye on as the situation progresses. I don't think it has an impact on the immediate day-to-day. And, it's not like they can take Griffin's $35 billion and start paying players left and right. No, it doesn't work exactly like that, but just something to be aware of and to keep your eye on. Now, lastly, want to close it out with the Hard Knocks news, because that's right, our Miami Dolphins are going to be featured on the In-Season Hard Knocks by HBO Max. I guess it's just Max now. Sorry, apologies with the branding there, but you get the idea. So tune in to Hard Knocks in season for a little bit of extra access on the Miami Dolphins. I know I'll be watching. Wonder if you'll be watching as well. So get ready to see the Dolphins on Hard Knocks. However, one person that won't be watching the Dolphins on Hard Knocks, that's Tua Tagovailoa. Look at this quote here. He says, "Nah, I'm not watching any of that." I don't know if I believe him. I think that if all the cameras were around weeks and weeks in practice, he'd be a little bit curious what makes the final cut. But we'll take him for his word for that. So I'm asking you, are you watching Hard Knocks tonight? Let me know. Hell yeah, or nah, I'm good. I'm going to be tuning in because I think any extra access about and around our Miami Dolphins is certainly compelling content that I want to consume. So let me know in the comments, and let's enjoy the extra access as our Dolphins are on the in-season edition of Hard Knocks. Keep it tuned in to Dolphins Today all week long as we continue to get you ready for Dolphins Jets on Black Friday. As always, we'll have our watch party for that game, so get ready to come early and get loud. Always a good time. The Dolphins trying to extend that lead in the AFC East at 7-3. And don't look now, but with the Dolphins at 8-3, the Ravens at 8-3, depending on the tiebreakers there with the in-division record, the Dolphins, when it's all the dust settles over the weekend, could be in first. But again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But join us for that watch party. It's going to be a blast. It always is. Shout out producer Rolly on the ones and twos. I just want to Rolly. But hey, I got to get out of here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Always a pleasure to be on the air with you and to be in charge and the host of Dolphins Today. And we'll see you next time on Dolphins Today.